Hi, my name is Gina Luciana, and I went to the Life Conference, and this is how I experienced God. So about 2 years ago, I walked away from God after about 16 years of pretending to follow Him. And I just got caught up in all the wrong things and all the wrong people, and I was influenced by worldly things. And I knew what I was doing, but I didn't really care. But then, as I was going to church, I felt convicted, so I started coming back to God a little bit and reading my Bible and doing devotions, kind of just going through the motions. But as I started to get closer to God, things started changing. It wasn't easy anymore. I couldn't just talk to God. As I would pray and worship, I would start to have blasphemous thoughts. So, for example, if I was singing something that said, "God, I surrender to you," instead of, I would say that out loud, but in my head it would say Satan instead of God. So anytime I would be praising God out loud and saying His name or Jesus' name, in my head it would replace it with Satan. So, I didn't know where that came from or why that started happening, but I couldn't control it. And it wasn't too bad, but it was enough that I said, no, forget this, I'm not doing that. I didn't want to have to deal with it, so I walked away from God again. And that kind of started the journey of an on and off, pray the sinner's prayer, start to get close to God again, and then it would come back. And I could never get past a surface relationship with God. Once I started breaking down that wall between surface and intimate, I started getting the thoughts about Satan again and other thoughts that were blasphemous as well. And so around Christmas, one of my good friends gave me a devotional, and this was during a time where I had turned my back on God again. And I started reading it, and I really liked it, but it was still only surface. And I kept saying, oh, God is speaking to me this way, God is speaking to me this way, but it really wasn't like that. It was just kind of me feeling good because I was doing something that I thought was right. And so, so I ended the devotional, and about the beginning of summer I started a new one, and that one really got to me. So that's when I started oh, I want to get closer to God again, and I would start breaking down that wall again, and the thoughts started coming back. And so anytime I would worship, it started out as worship, it started out small. I would worship and I would think Satan instead of God inside my head, which was terrifying. And then it started to happen while I was praying, and it started to happen as I would read my Bible. It would, if I was reading something about Jesus, which is the entire Bible, it would replace Jesus with Satan. So I could never think in my head God or Jesus. It would always be replaced with Satan. And anytime I would read something in the Bible, my mind would tell me to do the opposite of that. So if it were to say, don't worship idols, immediately my head would think up a picture of an idol and people worshiping it, and I'd be fantasizing about it. And so I was just all right, this time I'm not giving up. I'm going to push past it. I'm going to get past this on my own. I'm going to pray. And I would stand up in the middle of the night. Over the years, I would get so overwhelmed, I would stand up in the middle of the night and I would say, Satan, get away from me, I'm a child of God. But even as I said, I'm a child of God, it still replaced God with Satan. So in my head, it would say, I'm a child of the devil, which was a terrifying experience. And anytime I would say, God, come into my heart, it would say, Satan, come into my heart. And I couldn't get past it. I couldn't control my thoughts at all. And this happened for a really, really, really long time. I was at an all-time low. I mean, anytime I would think about God, I would think about Satan as well. And even if I wasn't thinking about it, it would still pop back into my head. So then I left for life, and I was like, okay, I better experience God on this trip, or I don't know what I'm going to do. So we went to the conference, and I mean, every single day we were worshiping God, and it was terrifying because at home I could just, if I was worshiping God and the thoughts came back, I could just stop. But at life you can't like get away from it. You can't stop thinking about God. Like that's the entire thing. So I was basically thinking about Satan the entire life conference. But then the speakers said some things like, nothing is an accident. Every single thing happens for a reason. And I know that that is true, that is true, because the last morning that we were there, I went into my friend's room. I had no intention of telling them whatsoever. I had never told anybody. So I went into my friend's room, and they asked me what's wrong, what had been wrong that entire week, because I was just struggling, and they knew that I was struggling, but I wouldn't tell them why. And I felt prompted to tell them because I couldn't hold it in anymore. So I told them, and I was crying, and they all just gathered around me, and they prayed for me. And they said, I command you, Satan, get away from her in the name of Jesus. And I knew that he had, like God was there. Jesus was there with me, and I knew it. And for the first time in my life, without music or anything to bring out my emotions, I felt that Jesus was there. And I knew that he was there with me. And I knew that he was there giving me peace and protecting me. And I didn't want to pray. My friend said, listen, we're going to make you pray. They would not take no for an answer. I said, no, I'm not praying. I can't. I was so terrified to pray to Jesus because I was so afraid that I would be praying to Satan. And I didn't want to say, Jesus, come into my heart, because I didn't want the devil to come into my heart. But after they all prayed for me, I said, whatever, I'll just do it. So I prayed, and I said, Jesus, I want you in my heart. And I didn't have a thought about it. I didn't think about Satan at all when I said that. So I continued, and I said, Jesus, if you have to take everything away from me, I still only want you. And I felt peace after I said that, and I said, Jesus, I surrender all to you. And I didn't think about Satan once as I was saying those words. I was never able to say surrender, or else I would feel as though I was surrendering to Satan. And I would never have dreamt of saying that you can take it all away from me, and I still want you, and I only want you. And that was like the moment that I knew that God had changed something inside of me. I knew that's not what he had for me. And so I felt peaceful. And it wasn't overwhelming. It was just, it crept in slowly. It was like I felt at peace. And then we hadn't had a worship time there because we were leaving. We were traveling all day, and then we came to Indianapolis, and we had worship sessions. And I was still, I wasn't completely trusting of God. I was still afraid that it might come back. But as we were worshiping, I kept saying, Jesus, I love you, Jesus, I love you, and nothing was happening. So I opened my heart, and I started worshiping, and I didn't think about Satan once. And it was weird because I kept thinking about that maybe it'll come back, because I was so used to having it there that I was uncomfortable without it, because I was so used to having the same, not Satan, just Jesus, but it not working, and thinking about Satan all the time. But as I was worshiping, the only thing that I could think of was Jesus. There was no way my mind was going anywhere else. And it was a relief to say, Jesus, I surrender all to you. And I just got on my knees and I worshiped God. And it was the first time in 2 years that I was able to worship Jesus without thinking about Satan or the devil or demons or anything. And it was just so relieving. And I know that, like, I don't know if it'll come back, but I know that I have people praying for me, and I know that God's with me, and I can feel Jesus is close to me, and that's the only thing that I've ever wanted, and now it's happening, and it's an amazing experience. And that's my story.
Hi, I'm Andrew ZIEGLER, and I went to the Life Conference 2016. So several months, or 3 or 4 months before the Life Conference happened, I was struggling through some things, and I really was looking to God through those things, and through that I was just asking God to show His presence, and I was like, God, why can't you show me something that you're there? And He never showed anything. And so yesterday at the Life Conference, on the last 2 songs, I put my head down and I was praying. I was like, God, if you're going to show me something, this is the time. And when I lifted my head up, there was a stranger there.
Hey, my name's Kyle Burns. I went to a Life Conference back in 2006 in Orlando, Florida. It's my second time. I was here as a sponsor, as a leader with my group. You guys were sitting in front of us. Andrew was sitting in front of us. As we were about to leave, our group was in the row behind Andrew, and I saw Andrew he had his head down, and I don't know who was sitting next to him, but they had a look of distraught. They just didn't know what to do. And in that moment, I was just like, I have a responsibility. And it's easy to pray for somebody, but to start going after things that you have no idea, and it's something that's coming from, you just don't know where it's coming from. Obviously, it's coming from the Lord. In retrospect, it's easy to see, but I saw him. I turned to him. I said, hey, is there anything I can do for you? He said, no, not really. I'm good. I said, can I at least pray for you? He said, yeah. And I knew from that moment that, okay, I'm a little bit more comfortable here, but then it got uncomfortable again because I had to trust the Lord that the information that I was hearing was from Him.
Before I knew it, this stranger was praying over me, and it was almost like he had been with me for my whole entire life, and I had told him all of my problems. Anything he said was just perfect and spot on with all my struggles, and he knew that I had problems deep down inside that I just couldn't get out. And I couldn't do anything but cry. We were all crying, and it was just a perfect moment that God had brought him over to me to pray over me, and it was the first time I've ever experienced God talking directly to me, and I knew it was just the perfect moment. Afterwards, I was just so in shock, and I couldn't stop shaking. I was just so happy but scared, and it was just such a thrilling moment that it's nothing I've ever experienced.
I had a face-to-face encounter with the Lord. He used me as a vessel to speak to my now friend, Andrew. And I was overcome with the presence of the Lord. And the words that exited my mouth were not my own. And they were a direct download from the Lord, just directly into Andrew's life. And I was deeply impacted because I have been asking for that for myself for so long. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that could have ever happened. And here I stand, being used as a vessel by the Lord, right to Andrew. It ministered to my soul to minister to Andrew's soul. And I'm so enthralled that the Lord just loves His children, that He loves Andrew, that He loves me, that He loves us all, and He chose this moment and us to just be loved, because that's who we are before we were ever even here. We were loved before creation even came in, and I'm just I'm so excited to see what happens in Andrew's life, and I'm going to ask him that I'm going to keep up with him. I'm going to keep up, and I want to see what happens in his life, because I know for a fact that something changed. Something changed in that encounter.
Hi, I'm BECCA RODNEY, and I went to the Life 2016 conference, and this is how God met me. In 2014, I got called to be a medical missionary. So there was a speaker who was speaking on the call into ministry or into missions, and she was talking about all the people in the world that haven't heard about Jesus Christ. She made a call for people to step forward and for you to proclaim that you want to do missions and be part of, or ministry, and be part of what God has ordained in your life. And so I stepped forward, and then this girl just came up and hugged me, and I just felt the presence of the Lord, and somehow she knew that I needed a hug, and that it was just like a perfect picture of like Jesus just embracing you no matter what. Like, I had no idea who she was or what her story was. I didn't even get her name, but we just hugged for a really long time, and she was crying and I was crying. It was just a beautiful picture of the family of Christ and what we are supposed to be. So going into my college years and wanting to do medical missionary work, I was having a lot of issues with trust in God and where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. But it was just crazy. And so at our time in Indianapolis, I was sitting in one of the last debriefing times there, and I heard a little whisper from God that said, "Trust your Father." And it was just amazing to hear a small, still little voice that said, "Trust it, and trust in Him, and that everything will be okay, and that everything is taken care of no matter what." And like, it just gave me such peace about what I was doing with my life, and that's where I'm supposed to be, and that's where I'm gonna go, and that He has it under control, and that He's bigger than everything that's going on in life.
The Life Conference was a great experience for me. I think that it certainly impacted my life. There are things I took away from it that they're still affecting me today, which is awesome. About 3 months before the Life Conference, I was in a low place. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I was certainly feeling the full impact and just the full effect of my sins, and it was just really bringing me down. And this was happening all the way up and through the Life Conference. And it was, I think, the last night of our worship, and I just had a terrible headache and stomach ache. I just was not feeling well. I was not into it at all. And then after the seminar, we broke up into our small group sessions and were discussing it. And at the very end, we had a time just to close in prayer. And I decided that instead of just praying for whatever we've been talking about, I would just worship God and praise Him for who He is, as the speaker discussed earlier in the week. And I did that, and immediately I just felt a huge amount of relief lifted up in my shoulders. I just no longer had a headache, no longer hurt at all, and I just felt really good. And it was just the most spectacular feeling I've ever had. It was just a certain just encounter with God. It was really amazing.
So my life has been a series of up and down, and it's been a mess, and it's been life. And I've been through a lot of mess and a lot of trouble, but God's always been there, and He's always been honest and true. And in the end, I've always seen God come out on top. So when I went to the Life Conference, I really struggled with whether or not this Christianity thing is really what I need, or if it's really for me, because I've never really felt God's love. And at Life, God showed me that I can feel loved no matter what I've done, no matter the sins that I've committed. I can still feel God's love, and God's love is holy and unending, and it's infinite. And Life pushed me in a good way, because it really showed me that there's a reason for my life, and there's a reason that God created me, and I have a purpose, and I can show God's love through my testimony, and I can use my testimony to help other people get closer to God's love and to truly understand God's love and what it means. So life gave me the chance to get away from my own life and experience God in a new, bigger, fresh way. And I felt God pushing me towards ministry at the Life Conference. And I don't know where in ministry I should be, but I know that I'm going to be in ministry. And I've put college applications in, and I'm working on moving forward so that my life reflects God's love and I can show God's love to the people around me.
Hi, my name is Joshua Thomas, and this summer I got the opportunity to attend the Life Conference. One big thing that God kind of revealed to me this week was my calling into ministry. Kids who I haven't even really talked to would come up to me and just start like kind of spilling out like their experience and what was going on in their world and their struggles, and I really felt like God was telling me like, hey, you're able to have these conversations and you're able to serve me through these. And in the past I've been interested in working with like computers and computer programming and things like that, and I have gifts in doing that, but this trip has really led me to switch my focus from making a career out of that to instead making a career out of ministry and focusing on serving God through those talents that He's given me.
So ever since I've been very young, I felt a strong call to missions on my life. I didn't know exactly what that meant or where that would be, but I knew that that's what God wanted me to do. But as I got older, it was harder to stick with that. It's hard to explain to people, and it's hard to dedicate your life to something that you're not quite sure how it's going to turn out. But life confirmed for me that that is God's call in my life, and whether it's overseas or in the United States, serving others and showing them God's love in a tangible way is a passion and a desire that God has given me, and I'm excited to see where that takes me in the future. So after Life, we were in Indianapolis, and it was the second night that we were having a worship and prayer service together. An image came to mind, and I was kneeling before God in heaven, just bowed down at His throne. All of a sudden, all these barriers just kept popping up in between me and God, and I couldn't get to Him. I couldn't look at Him. I couldn't get there. It was just all my sin that had been separating me from God just was blocking me. And that was terrifying because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I could get to God again. And then all of a sudden, blood came running down from the throne towards me and then out on the edges. And I looked up, and there was a blood cross just wiping away all the sin and all the obstacles that had been separating me from God. And it was in that moment that I really felt the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of the resurrection and the cross, because without it, we just can't get to God.
Hi, I'm BLACKBURN, and I went to the Life Conference this summer, and one of the things that God taught me was how much He loved us. I learned a lot from the story, or the parable that Jesus talked about from the prodigal son. It showed how much He cared about us and how much He actually wants to have a relationship with us, which I thought was very encouraging and very helpful in my walk with God. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sophia, and I went to the Life 2016 Momentum Conference, and I want to share a little bit about how God has been using me and speaking to me in my life. Back in April, the student ministries at ACAC did a famine, a 30-hour famine, and I felt like God had been pressing upon my heart the idea of international missions work. I didn't know what that meant for me. I still don't know what that really means, but it had been a thought on my mind for months to come. And leading up to this conference, throughout the week, everything that I learned had been something that I had been struggling with or debating on or trying to understand about God. And it was really just preparing my heart for the very last day. A woman named Cheryl spoke, and in her message, she talked about how much a fanatic you have to be for Christ to be a missionary, and how you have to be ready to give up your life for Him. And her message was so impactful that I just started bawling in tears and knew that that was what God had wanted for me that very moment, and that it wasn't just an accident that I was there. So they asked us to come up if we felt like God was calling us into ministry for the long haul. And I know He has ever since I was a kid, but at that very moment, I really felt like God was showing me that my future is going to be into international missions work. And I don't know what that means, but I'm so excited to have heard from God and to start growing and learning what that means and studying His Word and seeing what He has for me next.
Hi, I'm BRINLEY WICKER, and I went to the Life Conference this summer. One of the things that God taught me and really tugged at my heart this summer was I'm going into my freshman year, and it's going to be like a whole new start. I have a clear slate, and He's really telling me to just bring the Word of God to my school, because I know there's a lot of kids at my school that really don't know anything about God or the Bible or anything. And I really just want to help them through that, and I just want to be a helping hand to anyone in need. And I think it'll be a wonderful journey to be able to do God's work for Him and to be able to help my fellow church mates by doing that, my sisters and brothers in Christ, and to be able to just do His will is just amazing to me.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Grant. I attended the Life 2016 trip, and this is how I experienced God. Before this trip, I really didn't experience God in the way that I wanted to, and I kind of like fell away from what He wanted me to do. But He showed me that He's still there and that He still cares for me and that I'm not alone through this journey of life. I had a lot of conversations with different people throughout the week at Life, and that was a big change for me because I'm not exactly an open person, and it was really helpful to get advice from different people and like different perspectives of what I should do. And so throughout the week then I was just piecing together like all the conversations I had with people, and the very last night then we were in worship, and it was the end of the night, and we were singing some song, and I just felt like this like the puzzle was like completed in my life, and it felt like everything that was said to me during the week, everything that God said to me, everything that my friend said to me, that it all worked together, and it really showed me that there's a bigger picture than just, hey, there's a mission trip. Like there's a bigger picture than just that. It's calling to you, and it helps you see who you truly are, and through God and through your friends in ways. And so we were singing a song, and I just like bawled my eyes out, which is really weird because I don't like to do that in public, but I just was crying so much, and there were only 2 people who saw me. Like I was like in tears, like, oh, okay. So there are 2 girls in front of me, and they heard me because I was so loud, and they came over to me and they just hugged me, and it was awesome because they were people that I don't exactly talk to on a regular basis, and it was just, and now I do. So it was really cool to experience that and to experience God's love.